Welcome back, everyone. Today I want to talk about whether or not in the year 2025 or beyond, you should even consider purchasing a car with a manual transmission. Okay? This lever right here is becoming less and less popular. In the year 2025, brand new anyway, I believe there's only tens of cars that even have them, right? In America, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And I just kind of want to go over why you might still buy one in modern times. Obviously, you might have to go used to really get a vehicle that you want in a standard at this point, but we're going to talk about all that. So, first things first, I want to start this video off by dispelling a lot of myths about manual transmissions that I think people have used in the past to justify buying an automatic. Myth number one is that in traffic, it is a complete pain in the butt to drive a manual. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's as nice as an automatic, because it's not. Especially modern automatics with some cars can actually follow the car in front of them all the way down to 0 miles an hour. And in traffic, you have full self-driving almost, basically. That's a whole different topic. Let's just assume you're in a regular automatic car that you do still have to hit the gas and the brake to move traffic, right? Because that's a whole separate thing. It's not really a fair comparison, I don't think. So if you're in traffic, what you're going to do, right, is you're going to be in neutral when you're stopped with your foot on the brake. If it's a flat enough ground, you can actually take your foot off the brake and you can throw your e-brake on if you so chose for some reason. But generally, you're going to be e-brake off, foot on the brake, neutral. The second traffic starts to move, clutch in, first gear, forward, boom, you're doing your thing, right? Now, the key here is, as traffic starts to accelerate, you don't want to do what you might do in an automatic, and that is, hammer it, stay on the guy's bumper in front of you, and then all of a sudden, everything comes to a stop, you're clutching, brake, throwing it back in neutral, and then you're doing that over and over again. No, what you want to do is leave yourself like 2 to 3 to 4 times the amount of following distance maybe that you would in an automatic. And what you can do is you can kind of smooth that out to where most of the traffic transitions from stopping to going, you can just be cruising, all right? First gear, clutch all the way out, just kind of bumming along. You're lugging the engine a little bit, but the reality of it is at such a slow speed, you're not going to do any damage. If you're going up a steep hill, okay, fine. Maybe you want to not do that. But for the most part, you can just putt around at like 7, 8, 9, 10 miles an hour. And then you can just make up that gap. And then you can clutch in, brake, neutral. So I think most people don't do that because they're like, oh, I don't want to hold up traffic and wind up, being like a rolling roadblock, which I appreciate and I respect that. However, 2 things. Number one, you're in a standard and you have a right to eat up a little bit more of the road as a result in that sense. You're driving a vehicle that's mechanically different, right? You need that extra space. But additionally, if you look at traffic jams and how they occur and how they happen and how they exacerbate, that's actually the exact thing that makes traffic jams worse. If everybody smoothed the transition from start to stop out, you'd actually clear the traffic jam faster. You can go look that up. That's a real thing. So you're actually helping, believe it or not, get everybody through that faster by doing what you're doing. So you shouldn't feel guilty. If anything, you should feel guilty trying to ride the ass of the person in front of you all the time because you're actually making things worse, which I'm guilty of all the time myself too. So don't get me wrong. Anyway, that's number one. Now, caveat there, if you live in like California or some big city and you have just insane amounts of traffic every single day, probably not the car to buy for you. Being a standard, that then it might really get annoying. But I'm talking for somebody who lives in an area that they're only encountering true bumper to bumper traffic for a handful of minutes per day, or half an hour at a time, but once a month, more infrequent, right? If you're in the middle of New York City, also maybe not the best choice, that kind of thing. So that's number one. We're going to dispel that myth. On the flip side, though, myth number 2 and 3 is that manual is more efficient. Well, that used to be a real thing. That wasn't a myth for the longest time. Now, unfortunately, automatics have gotten so good that, believe it or not, shifting your own gears is worse for fuel economy, generally speaking, than a properly, tuned and made automatic transmission. So that's not really the case anymore. And then manuals used to be cheaper, and now they're typically not. So as of this car being made, this 2013 Camaro, I do believe the manual option was still technically cheaper in like a regular SS Camaro or the V6 Camaro of the time. But I think nowadays, for the most part, they're the same price, or maybe even a touch more. Like if you look at Porsches and stuff, maybe not. Maybe they are still cheaper. I'll have to fact check myself on that one. But generally speaking, if you're going to lose a little bit of fuel economy, which you technically do, it over time probably makes that transmission ever so slightly marginally more expensive. Failure proneness aside for either auto or manual. Anyway, but let's talk about some advantages. So the first number one big thing that I want to talk about is drive modes. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, it's a standard transmission. It doesn't have drive modes. Well, yes and no. Okay, yes and no. Because people forget that the human mind and body is really the most incredible machine on earth still to this day. Okay? Yes, we have AI. Yes, we have incredibly advanced computers. We have great cars that have automated technologies and transmissions specifically that have automated technologies, and they're all fine and dandy. But the human brain and body, leg and arm and whatever, its ability to regulate something as seemingly simple as, gear, clutch, gas gear, or gas clutch, shifting the next gear, all that kind of stuff. As has been proven via sports cars in the past and even current day, dual clutch transmissions are single clutch automated transmissions have been notably herky-jerky for forever, basically. Until very recent times, and even now they still struggle. The technology's been more or less abandoned because they were never able to make a computer shift, especially off the line, getting on the friction zone of the clutch. They weren't able to make it work as reliably, consistently every time as a human being who's doing it themselves, who is skilled. And when I say skilled, I'm talking a level of skill that any reasonably coordinated person can achieve, right? This doesn't, you have to be a race car driver. And that is such a profound thing when you really think about it. The type of transmission in this car, which is a single clutch manual transmission, we have not found a way to have a computer automate and be notably better than a person. We've instead had to go to different technologies to get a similar result. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. And what I think is even cooler about that is it just goes to show you how special it is. Not to overstate this, but how special it is if you can drive a standard transmission well. What that really means, what you're doing from a skill perspective, and what an art form that actually is. And it's an art form that's disappearing. It's something that a lot of people, I would say probably the majority of people, total, but especially under 30 or under 20 or whatever, it's a skill they don't have. And we have to decide as a car culture or as a world if we want to lose this skill entirely. And you know what? Honestly, if we lose the skill, it's okay. Like, that happens, right? I don't have the skill to ride a horse like I probably would have 100 plus years ago, right? So that's okay. But I just don't think we're in the position yet where we want to lose that skill. I think this is worth saving. And here's why. So, drive modes, okay? In an automatic, you might have a button on a lever, let's say, and you can select a tow haul mode. You can select a sport mode. You can select a normal, an economy, all that kind of stuff. Well, guess what, guys? It's going to sound kind of crazy, but if I want economy mode, I go into first gear. I slowly let the clutch out. Okay, clutch is out. I slowly accelerate. Bring the RPMs barely up. Maybe I shift into third, right? I skip shift. And then I do the same thing, bumming around. And then I go from third to fifth. And then I go from fifth into sixth as soon as I can. And then I'm coming to a stop. So rather than rev match downshifting, I'm going to instead just go from sixth straight into neutral and then coast into the coast up to the intersection. Now, if I want like sport mode, well, obviously I'm going to go into first gear. I'm going to rev it up to whatever, 2,500 RPM. I'm going to kind of very quickly let the clutch out and hit the gas at the same time. I got 6,500 RPM. Bang a shift, bang a shift, bang a shift. That's my sport mode, right? I mean, this is kind of obvious, but people don't think about it this way. You want a normal mode. Okay, normal mode is just normal driving, first gear, second gear. Maybe I'm going to skip shift to fourth gear. Then I'm going to go back to third gear because I slowed down. Then I'm going fifth gear, and then I go sixth. Right? I'm skipping around. I'm using whatever gear I need. I'm jumping between gears as necessary. A lot of automatic transmissions couldn't even skip shift for the longest time. They had to jump through every subsequent gear to get to where they wanted to get to. So it's kind of funny when you think about it in these terms, but manuals have had features that only the most recent automatics have been able to develop. They've had them for 100 years, like being able to skip shift. Now, on a lot of manuals, you wouldn't want to skip shift back in the day because of the power of the engine and all that stuff. But anyway, it is a feature that was there. So, like, in this kind of cool way, you've got all of your drive modes. You have whatever drive mode you want because you're the freaking driver of the car, which, like, it's not in the way people think about it, but I just think that that's pretty neat. Like, you can really control the vehicle for what it is. And part of my, I think, passion for this is that I grew up riding dirt bikes and motorcycles and stuff, and so those are essentially all manual. Now there are some automatics, but for the most part, right, 8% of motorcycles on the road are manuals. And it's such a critical part to motorcycling, whole separate video, that I think it makes me appreciate it in a car, though, even more. So then here's the big thing that most car guys will hang their hat on as far as manuals. And their big argument is that it's just simply more fun. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Even driving around town, this is a kind of another thing that people take for granted. Just driving around town in not even a sports car, even just a Jeep Wrangler or a Tacoma or something that has a standard but doesn't have a ton of power. It is so much fun and just breaks up the monotony of the day, in my opinion, to have have your manual transmission. You're coming off red lights. It's fun to accelerate, and you get to grab a gear, and then, you jump into third, and then maybe you rev match it back into second. You're just doing stuff with your body and your hands, and you're not just sitting there with one hand on the wheel and another hand eating a cheeseburger, which, listen, there's a time and place for that too. I'm not even faulting that, like a road trip, whatever. But I have truly driven this car in Boston traffic, New York City traffic, Charlotte, North Carolina traffic. I've driven it in the winding mountain roads of Massachusetts, New York, and North Carolina, for example, as well as other places in Virginia. I've done track days. I've commuted in it. I've gone on road trips with it. I've done all of the things you can do in a car, and I've done it with a standard transmission. And I've truly never once, I promise you, I would tell you if I had never once said to myself, wow, I don't want to take this car on XYZ journey because of its transmission. Never once. Now, I may have said that about other things. The ride's a little harsh. Maybe these sportier seats aren't as comfortable. Maybe I need the payload, space of a pickup truck to go somewhere. Like, that's fine, right? It's just different vehicles. But I've never once said that the standard transmission was the thing that stopped me from using it. Now, I want to make one very important caveat to all of that. And this is going to contradict what I just said. In towing-based pickup trucks, F-250s, Ram 2500s, Chevy 2500s, that kind of stuff, I do think that having a standard can be more annoying to a point where it's not worth it compared to an auto. Here's why I say this. If we're talking the modern era especially, the modern 8-speeds, 10-speeds have gotten so good, and they're so good at finding the right gear ratio while you're towing, to go to a 6-speed manual, especially in a gas truck, but even a diesel, okay? If you're towing a big hill, because this is all mountains around here, right? So let's imagine we're in a truck for a second. I know this doesn't look like a truck, but let's just say it is. You've got a 6-speed manual, Cummins G56 truck, all right? So we're in fourth gear, right? Okay, we're in the throttle, we're running 15 pounds of boost, we're making truck noises, whatever, okay? Now, I'm about to hit a big hill. So I'm in fourth, and I stick it to the boards, and I just want to let the boost, bring the boost up a little bit. I think I can pull this hill in fourth. Well, I'm not correct. I can't pull the hill in fourth. Now I'm going to clutch in, I'm going to rev match, and I'm going to grab third. Okay, now I'm in third, but here's the problem. And you get this in cars too, but it's more of a problem if you're towing. I just lost all my boost in that gear shift. The second I put the clutch in, boom, boost is gone because the vacuum or the engine starts to, get overpressured, right? You're trying to push air into what is now a, engine that's not requiring throttle input, okay? And you're going to lose that boost. So now I'm in third. I make that shift to third, and I'm back in the throttle. Now I'm waiting. Come on, boost. Come on, boost. Come on, boost. Oh, the boost hits. Well, in that meantime, up that 7% grade, I just lost another 5 miles an hour. So now I'm really burying my foot in that thing at a higher level of boost than I probably needed to just get the engine kind of get the load back going back up the hill, right? So now I'm really pushing this thing. I'm building EGTs. I'm doing all that stuff. I finally crest the top of the hill. And now I'm back into fourth. And then I'm going maybe all the way into fifth or sixth, depending on the weight of the trailer. Okay, that's fine. But if I had an automatic, right? Let's say the automatic is in fourth. And then I need a little bit more gear for that hill. I just reach over to my stock. I hit an arrow, the down arrow on my stock or the down arrow on my steering wheel on a Ram. Okay, boom, hit the down arrow. And it just bumps it into third and it doesn't lose any boost. And it, carries its momentum and all that kind of stuff. That is the thing with a standard that is the big disadvantage, in my opinion, with the truck application, is just that smoothness while towing in the mountains. If you're on flat lands, it doesn't freaking matter. You can just afford to lose the boost and whatever, right? But if you're in the mountains, towing with a standard can be difficult if you're towing all the time, every day. If you've got that Tacoma and you're going to tow twice a year, who freaking cares? A standard might be fun to tow with, honestly. And especially an engine that's not boosted, it's less of a problem because you might lose a couple miles an hour between shifts, but you're not trying to build back boost and all that kind of stuff. So that definitely, is something to kind of consider as a caveat to this, but I do like it. Lastly, I want to address the fact that a lot of people, rightfully so, point out the fact that manuals are almost always, if not always, in a sports car application anyway, slower than an automatic nowadays. And the simple fact of the matter is, okay, regardless of how good the human being is, all right, my foot can only move so fast realistically on this clutch, okay? I mean, I don't care if you're a race car driver, you can only stab that clutch in so fast. And then you can only move this lever so fast. And they have to be timed closely enough that as the clutch is going in, the second the clutch breaks the connection between the engine and the trans, you're starting your pull, or you're going to miss the gear. Because what'll happen is you'll rip it out of first into neutral, but your clutch is not actually in yet. And then you're going to wind up missing that shift because you're not going to have a depressed enough clutch. The synchros are going to speed up and second gear is going to be unobtainium. So you've really got to, and you're doing this all under full throttle typically if you're trying to drive fast. So it's like full throttle. Whoops. So full throttle. Like it's tricky. There's a lot to that. And that's part of the fun of driving a manual. But you're going to be not much faster than this no matter what you do. A computer with a dual clutch transmission is practically instantaneous because it's essentially lined the next gear up, ready to be shifted into while you're still in the previous gear. So you're never going to beat that, and that's why they're slower. And even a torque converter based automatic, they've gotten to the point where they shift fast enough now too that the electronic solenoids and stuff have gotten fast enough that they pretty much click gears in almost like a dual clutch in the right application. But here's my thing. I don't freaking care. I literally couldn't care less that it's slower for two reasons. Number one, if you're that worried about it being slower, unless you're in supercar and especially hypercar territory, just dump more power into the car and you can have the exact same experience, right? Except the fact that the transmission's not optimized, but you can just have enough power to where you can afford that shifting loss, okay? That's number one. Number two, things like short throw shifters and whatnot can help speed it up. And, number three, it's just so much more fun that it's well worth the trade-off to me. Like I enjoy the art of driving. I enjoy the art of manually shifting my own transmission. And paddles are cool and they're fun, they're awesome, but it's just a different thing. This is more F1 car, like sport bikey kind of thing. This is like old school muscle sports car, curvy road, mountains of France, driving around, the sun's down, James Bond type crap. Okay, that's what this is, right? The paddles are the new modern era Formula 1. And I'm sounding like a boomer when I'm saying all this, but my point is, if you've never driven a standard, once you've gotten to know it and are skilled at it, because if you're not skilled at it, they suck. Like, they're just not fun to drive, honestly. But if you're skilled at it, there's just no driving experience like it. And that's why people like me are hanging on to these things, despite the fact that technology has surpassed us. You know, maybe I'm the guy who would have still driven the horse and buggy in 1920 when the car was clearly taking over. Maybe. But I didn't get a smile on my face from my horse and buggy, so I guess that is what it is. So anyways, guys, with that being said, as always, thanks for watching. I know this is a longer one, but I hope it gives you some perspective. I always love showing off the old Camaro. I love this car. It's a lot of fun. I've had it a lot of years. So thanks for watching. God bless America, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.